What's up, everyone? It's Joey, Blush Response, and welcome to the latest episode of Sound and Structure. Today, I'm talking to Andrew of Steady State Fate, one of my favorite Euro rec makers who makes some of the coolest stuff, including my favorite filter ever, the Triptych. Let's get right into it.
All right, so we're here with Andrew from Steady State Fate. How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good, man.
Good.
Tell me what's up in this SSF world.
What's up in the SSF world? A lot of hard work.
Okay.
Been busy. Been designing a lot of new stuff. I think this year, next year is going to be a lot of new stuff that I'm going to be putting out. Yeah.
Let's talk about your recent releases, the Dipole, the Triptych, the ZPO. Is there anything else I'm missing? Those are the most
Vortices.
Vortices?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Ultra Kick.
Yeah, you have a new version of Vortices coming out, right?
Yeah, that's starting to ship out this week.
Okay. Tell me about the concept behind Vortices, because I really love that one. Did a fun review, which all of you should watch.
Yeah, the original one, just basically the idea, as far as the sound goes, is to kind of mimic vintage sound that you get from analog mixing consoles and tape saturation. And so that idea, just in kind of a modular style mixer where you have two kind of separated mixers, one for mono stuff and one for stereo stuff, and different feedback points and stuff like that.
Was there a specific mixer you had in mind, or just anything from?
No, it's just kind of just capturing that kind of sound.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think it did it very well. Like, I have a couple Soundcraft boards and I have one of those Boss BX series mixers, which, as far as I know, was like the techno mixer.
Right.
That and like the Mackie 1604, I think.
Right.
Yeah, and it really gets into the vibe the same way, to the point that I don't use the BX anymore.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about like, what's your approach when you're designing a module? Do you have specific ideas in mind, or do they come together as you're putting it together?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, it starts out with just coming up with a new idea, or maybe a different way of doing something, or maybe just combining certain things into one module. But then through the design process, there's a mix of like discoveries that I might want to like focus in on, or maybe just trying to hone in on a particular aspect of the design. So there's a lot of like experimentation that goes into it once like an initial design idea is begun, you know.
Okay. Do you have like a master list of ideas that you're going to implement, or?
Maybe. I mean,
Okay.
It's kind of just a whole lot of ideas like in my head, I think. You know, a lot of times if I have an idea that I can't get to, I might just like design like a panel, and you know, then I can revisit that later and be like, okay, where was I going with this? And you know, those ideas might evolve, where I might take something from a previous like idea and just kind of, you know, if it's going to work out in like a newer module, like I try to incorporate it.
Is there an example of a module like that that's come out?
I think Vortices is like that.
Okay.
And I think I was really just trying to design a compact mixer, and you know, and I also had an idea to like have like a tape saturation. It just so happened that a lot of the parts that I was using could accommodate that. So, you know, I spent a lot of time just like tweaking that design. It was designed for a long time ago, and I was just messing with it for a few weeks before I was really satisfied with the sound. I think capturing that kind of sound is kind of difficult in a lot of respects, but it's certainly achievable, you know, using discrete components. You don't necessarily need the tape pickup or anything like that, or like old transformers. A lot of that's, you know, almost any sound could be emulated. It's just, you know, trying to capture the essence of that sound, I think, is where like a lot of the trial and error came through.
So I'm going to ask, because you would know, like, when you're looking at a vintage synth, I imagine there are parts that have come out of production that are not available anymore. Do you find that there's much difference in terms of the I don't know, the ingredients of like a old IC versus a new IC or something?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of the character that comes out of the old synths, it's really like stuff that isn't working to its full potential. And I still feel that way like about just a lot like when people like a particular type of sound, it's usually because it's not perfect. It's usually because it incorporates like a Vactrol or like a particular type of transistor that exhibits a certain kind of behavior. And it's usually just one that doesn't operate the best. It really is that's really the factor in my mind that gives things their uniqueness and their character.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's no like, when you're looking, like say you wanted to design an MS-20 filter, there's no special magic sauce in a 70s MS-20 that isn't gonna be attainable today, for example.
I think that you could get the magic sauce by just cloning it.
Okay.
But I mean, I think it's been done before that you could get that type of a sound using different components.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it's by the ears at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. I think a lot of my experience in designing is it usually, once there's like the base circuitry is done, it's just tweaking things by ear. Tweaking values and messing with slightly different ideas to get a particular type of sound. And it's not something that I could sit down with a piece of paper and like calculate. Like it just takes like actual experiment with the circuit and just like messing around with it.
Okay. And so to that end, you did the Vortices. Now you're putting out the Vortices Hi-Fi, right?
Yeah.
The Hi-Fi is the clear, no tape saturation.
Yeah, it just doesn't have tape saturation. Doesn't have the permanent high-end roll-off, which I prefer. I think it really, there's some situations where it might not be beneficial, but I really like the way that it colors the sound. I think it makes kind of rounds off those high frequencies that can sometimes be a little bit harsh or piercing.
Yeah, I find that in my own stuff it works well for that. Like with a lot of the digital modules, they just have a bit of a buzz in there, and I put them through the Vortices, and it's fine.
Yeah,
I also use it a lot for summing drums and stuff from different modules together,
right?
And sending those out to an effect after, because it just glues them so nicely. So I like that. I wanted to ask if there are any kind of musical influences that go into designing your modules.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say that there's like any specific ones, but I've really always been into electronic music, and there's certain sounds that like have captured me, and I find that when I design a module that approaches like that kind of sound, like it kind of drives me to hone in on that and to kind of focus on that one thing. I know it's a little weird, but like it's like if something makes like a really cool like drum and bass line, like like I want to focus on that. Like I want to make it the best for that kind of music. But that being said, I wanted to like cover all kinds of music. So but it definitely influences me. Yeah, it's just like grabbing those sounds that have touched me, in my youth.
But can you name some artists like that?
It's a tough one for me, because I'm not really, never really been one to like focus in on any particular artist. More just like genres, and from that perspective, I mean, I love techno. I've always liked drum and bass, jungle, house, basically everything electronic. I'm not really into trance or anything like that, but the harder stuff, I'm definitely all about.
Cool.
Yeah.
And, you know, growing up in the 90s in New York, probably went to a lot of parties.
Yeah, went to a lot of raves.
The golden age of the scene, from what I hear from everyone.
It was, yeah. I'd say from like 93, 94 to the turn of the century, it was the golden time. It was a good time. A lot of cool people.
Anytime I talk to anyone from that era, like Atomics, is like, yo, you don't understand the 90s, it was crazy, man.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it was good. It was really fun. A lot of cool people, a lot of, like, we really felt like a big family, you know?
That's cool.
Yeah, it was good times.
What was, like, do you find, like, back then, how was the format of the parties? Like, would you go just to a techno party, or would it be all kinds of music in one party?
Yeah, I mean, they would have all kinds of music there. You know, there'd be like the main stage would be like house and techno, I guess, and there'd be like a chill lounge with like drum and bass or something like that. Yeah, I mean, most of the parties tried to cover like all styles. Yeah.
Any specific sets you remember for life from that era, or?
Yeah, I mean, like Carl Cox, DJ Dan. I mean, they always had 6 sets. Who else did I like? I was really into jungle.
Okay.
You know, we were like kind of like gangster jungle kids for a while.
Okay.
You know?
Do you have a tracksuit or anything, or?
No.
Okay.
No, it was more like big pants and like Tommy Hilfiger or like Ralph Lauren, you know?
Awesome.
Like prep on top, weirdo kid on the bottom with giant pants.
Awesome. Like the UFO pants?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was the DOS kid in high school, so I had the UFO pants too.
Yeah, like Liquid Sky, UFO, yeah.
I had Kickwear was the brand.
Right.
You remember them?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Jinkos at some point.
Jankos, yeah.
Oh yeah, 90s were great.
They were fun times.
But I never got to go to a rave because I was just a bit too young. My aunt was a raver though. So.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of just like died, you know? It just became like more of a club thing. And, you know, that was still fun. But the whole rave thing was like, it's just like a different universe, I'd say. Yeah.
I mean, I played a couple illegal raves in like Paris and stuff and a couple other places, but it doesn't, like, I'm assuming it's a similar vibe, but I was never there. So when I hear about this mystical 90s era, it's like, oh, I wish I could have seen it, you know?
Yeah, it was a special time.
Yeah, I can imagine. And so bringing it back to the company,
Yeah.
what is Steady State Fate? What does it mean? Does it have anything to do with music, or what's it referencing?
Yeah, I mean, it's got something to do with electronics. It has something to do with like movement in general.
Okay.
You know, feedback systems in general. You know. I mean, to be you know, in electronics, like a steady state is like just kind of like the quiescent state, like the calm state of a system. You know, and that could be like a steady direct current. It could be like an oscillation. And, you know, steady state fate, it's like, okay, everything like eventually returns to steady state, but you're also always keeping it from being in steady state. So it's kind of like a recursive, you know, feedback loop kind of thing.
Oh, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And SSF is a good acronym and all that. It's catchy, you know. What is there a specific design you're most happy with or most proud of, or?
I feel like everything new that I come out with, I'm the most proud of, but I'm especially happy with the Ultra Kick.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've been hearing a lot about it. I can't wait to do the review. Just got one, so we have a funny story with that. Is that Andrew sent that to me like 2 months ago from the recording of this, and it got lost in the mail for a month. Now I've been in the U.S. and my girlfriend called me. And she's like, oh, this package just came from Andrew, so it's finally there. Review's coming soon. Like, tell me about it.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked the original bass drum synth. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of things I didn't like about it, but one of the big things that I liked about it is that it was very much like a synth voice, and you know, but as far as kicks go, it could do it, but there's so much range in it. You know, like you had to really kind of like be careful in dialing it in, like the sweet spots for kicks. but I wanted to have that kind of like synth voice aspect to like something that could just like stay on the kicks, and also do like bass lines and like synthy stuff. But on the other hand, I also wanted it to sound better and more polished, and have a way to. I know people like to be able to like adjust like the impulse and the click of a kick, and so I wanted to have like a kind of a novel way of doing that, but not one that's so separate like a noise source, because it always sounds like two different things. So the design uses two filter cores, and they both resonate. And the main core will resonate into the secondary core. And the secondary core is really to like shape the body type of sound and to shape the impulse, the click. And it ends up being like a very cohesive sound, because it's all really just part of the same sound that you're triggering. So I really like that aspect about it. And then it has a built-in compressor. It basically has an autodyne built into it.
Cool.
So that really like it just out of the box, it delivers a very polished sound, and I really like that about it.
I use the autodyne all the time on kicks, so
Yeah,
it's nice that this one has it in there.
Right, it has it built in, so you could just throw it out.
No, I use it for the other kicks, but I'll probably throw them out after I use the ultra kick.
maybe.
Let's see. I'm curious about that one. Hold on, I'm getting paranoid here. All right, we're good. Yeah. I always have this freak out, like, is it still recording?
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Dipole is probably my current favorite module from you. Tell me about the ethos behind that design.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like every time I want to design something, it kind of starts out being pretty insane, and I just try to add every feature that I'd like to see or have, and then I have to start dialing it back, because it's just like, it's too many things. So I wanted a stereo filter, but I didn't really feel like it was enough to have just like a stereo filter. So I made it a stereo dual peak filter, and that's where I began. No, like I wanted to have a stereo filter that could also be used as two different filters, be dual mono and or stereo. And I like the idea of combining all of the filters at once. So, it was really about like kind of taking the best of that architecture, at least what I could fit in a 20 HP panel, and have it be comfortable to use. So yeah. My first filter, really, besides the ones I did with WMD, but yeah, I mean, I'm already working on a new one. So.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Very curious what's going to be in that. Do you want to share, or you?
Well, it's going to be in the vein of the stereo dipole, but kind of going down a different road, different types of distortion, different types of resonance, different pole mixing techniques.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever thought to make like a half pole, like a single-sided?
Half pole?
I don't know what to call it. A pole?
I guess a half pole would be like a 3 dB filter. No, actually, no, it has, it does have a single pole option. Yeah.
But I mean like one that's just a mono filter.
Oh, a stereo half pole.
Yeah. Or single, not even stereo mono.
Yeah. I mean, I have thought about it. I mean, for some reason, I just kind of shy away from the smaller modules. I mean, in the sense of like not being as involved. I feel like people expect my stuff to be kind of like lots of things packed into one. I mean, I'm not against making like a single filter. I'll probably do it at some point, but I just tend to like start big and then kind of scale down to like, something reasonable. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that because I think it sets your stuff apart. You know, every design is like really feature dense, big, and it's going to add a lot to a system. Like, for example, the Triptych, you've got, you know, a filter, a distortion / wave shaper. You've got the comb filter. You can do, you know, short delay stuff with it. It's like really impressive. It's actually my favorite filter right now.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites too.
It's
Yeah.
just so like anything I put through it sounds good. Like I even did the Behringer TD3 MO review, the modular one. So I patched it with the Triptych in it, and it's funny because in the comments people are upset, like, well, he's patching it with his modular system. Of course it sounds good. It's that Triptych. You need to spend money on that to get it sound that way. And I'm like, I mean, okay, but
It costs twice as much.
yeah, it costs more than the fucking thing, but it's I mean, it does really sound good. And at the same time, also with that video, it's like, well, it's a modular 303. Why wouldn't I patch it? You know,
Yeah,
that's
totally.
the point. So, but yeah, the Triptych, it's like, I even sometimes use it just as like subtle saturation.
Yeah.
Also, the saturation of the dipole is really good for that.
Yeah.
Both of those are SSI designs, right?
Yeah, I mean the dipole started as with the cool audio chips, but
Behringer again.
right. But I switched a couple years ago over to the SSI 2164. Yeah.
So was there a run that came out with the cool audio chips?
Yeah, the first ones.
Is the one I have cool audio or SSI?
It might be.
Okay, I gotta look at the back.
Yeah. And you know, those two chips are actually a little bit different. They don't work exactly the same, and in some circuits they don't work at all. Like in the Entity bass drum synth, the SSI chip did not work.
Okay.
And so a lot of parts would have had to be changed in order to work with that chip. But I put them in the dipole, and the performance of it was better with the SSI chip, I would say. I mean, it's very slightly, like, it's interesting. It had like a lower frequency range, and it FM better, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to compare them back to back now because I never noticed the cool audio. Is the cool audio chip like an SSI style filter, or is it a different?
It's a clone of the 2164.
Okay.
So, I mean, like, they're both clones. It's just that the SSI is a better one.
What was your decision in going with the 2164 design over like making your own?
I mean, I had done that before with the collab stuff. I think that those VCAs are just like excellent building blocks. You know, I had been experimenting with it, so it was something that I wanted to use. I mean, if it wasn't going to be those, it would probably be like the That Corp chips, which are basically just clones of it too. So
I have a couple of that VCAs. I think the Manhattan Analog one.
Yeah.
I like the sound of those.
yeah, they're very similar. They have some extra features to them, some of their chips. Yeah.
Also, I think the random source stuff uses that chips now for the VCAs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know that did filter records as well.
Well, I mean, it's just a VCA, and you use the VCA in a filter as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't know anything about circuit design.
Yeah. And the Ultra Kick and Autodyne, they both use that Corp chips too.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you go about selecting parts? Like, did you audition a bunch of different chips, or?
Yeah, I mean, as a designer, like, you're like, oh, a VCA, like, I'm gonna get some of those because VCA is probably the most common thing to use, especially in modular synths. You know, besides that, what I use a lot is just like a discrete, like, differential pair VCA, which is just like a couple of transistors. I use that a lot because you know, anything with voltage control, or you know, I put a lot of VCAs in my modules. So I mean, it's a lot. It sounds good, but it's a lot simpler than just buying like 20 chips. You know, VCA chips. And the other thing is that the response on those VCAs is logarithmic or exponential, and you have to linearize it. So it's kind of like you got to like use another VCA in the VCA. So you know, it could take up a lot of real estate for something that you could put with a little tiny transistor pair. You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that also, I guess, is a similar reason for going surface mount over through-hole.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of through-hole. I mean, there's obviously people out there that will have their arguments for why through-hole sounds better, but honestly, there really isn't a big difference. I mean, it might just be like your through-hole stuff is some vintage part that has a particular sound that you're familiar with. But, you know, like, there are other factors with surface mount, but for the most part, I think you can get the same kind of sound with surface mount as you can with through-hole stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I always hear the legend of like through-hole parts and this and that, and
A lot of it's psychological, I think. Yeah.
As most things are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to that end, tell me about the ZPO, because it's got quite a unique modulation in it.
Yeah. So the ZPO, it does have a different type of modulation. So the idea behind that is, you know, with through zero, it's about like generating extra harmonic content, right? And all of that really comes from the reversing of the waveform. Every time it reverses, that's what creates this harmonic content. So, you know, I had this idea, like, why don't you decouple that behavior from like the frequency controlled core? And so the concept was really it's very close to like a ring modulation, but it happens like super fast. So, you know, if you ever watch like a scope with through zero, you can see when the waveform flips, right? So it kind of basically the same idea, except, you know, when the frequency is going down, it's also flipping, which creates kind of like a crossfade from one phase to the other. So that, of course, is like a ratio. It has like a relationship between the speed of the modulator and the speed of the carrier. So you're going to get a balance between ring modulation and more like traditional through zero type sounds. But overall, it just generates like a whole other spectrum of harmonics. And I really liked what I was hearing out of it. So I kind of went down that road.
Yeah, it does sound quite cool. When I got it, it was an unexpected result, because I was expecting traditional through zero, and I was like, well, this is not it. But then I was like, no, it's something else. Let's roll with that.
Yeah, it's a different thing, yeah.
And I like that it's really fully featured. It has everything you need in a VCO.
Right.
This is cool for that. Are you considering revisiting the through zero concept anytime? Or
maybe.
Okay. There's one module I've always been curious about, is the gate storm. You did it with erogenous tones. What's the story behind that, and have you considered revisiting gates as a concept?
Yeah, I mean, Rick Burnett from erogenous tones, you know, he programmed that. You know, he's really the mastermind behind that one. I'm not really a digital person. I'm an analog person. I don't really dabble in digital too much, but you know, we wanted to kind of create just like a really crazy gate sequencer, trigger sequencer. You know, that module, it does have a lot of features. We didn't make a whole bunch of them, but you know, the people that did end up getting them are enjoying them. They actually have a lot of similar features like your NerdSeek does.
Okay.
Maybe not quite as extensive kind of programming features, but it was kind of like inspired by the tracker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you thought about doing any kind of sequencer? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to have a sequencer, because I'd really like to do a drum machine. But like I said, I'm not really a programmer. So if someone wants to program me a dope drum sequencer, you know, I'll incorporate it into this drum machine. But yeah.
All right, guys, it's your turn. Hit up Andrew. Well, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I was always looking at that one. A friend of mine got one quite recently, shifted. I think I mentioned to you that he got it. He makes really cool techno, and he loves the thing. Mm-hmm. So I was looking to find one, but they're quite rare these days.
Yeah. They are rare.
Mm-hmm. I remember you started with the propagate and the I'm gonna butcher the name, but it was like the envelope.
The positronic transient gate.
Yeah. What led you to start Steady State Fate and then start with those? And also the Quantum Rainbow was one of the first two.
Yeah, yep. Well, I mean, I don't know, I guess it was like 2006, 2007. I was going to school for electrical engineering, and, I wanted to do something with sound. I've always been into synths, so, that's kind of the road I was headed towards. And I was doing a lot of like circuit bending and like DIY stuff. So, like, I had worked for other companies for a long time, and I just also wanted to have my own business. There weren't really many Eurorack manufacturers at the time. I don't think Eurorack was really that big. It was just kind of starting to get big. Big, I mean, relatively. But honestly, I was doing a lot of 5U stuff. And and that's kind of like where I was thinking I would go. But Eurorack started taking off, so that's when I wanted to say that I wanted to start a company making synths. The Quantum Rainbow was just like, being like a fledgling designer. That was an easy one. Kind of just test the waters. They're still being sold today. It's my first module. It's being sold for the last 12 years. So, and the PTG, that was just like an idea I had because, everyone was always into Vactrals. So I wanted to kind of make like a Vactral controlled like envelope. Mm-hmm. If I were to design that module now, I'd do it a little bit differently. Like, it's a pretty open-ended module, but I did make kind of like a 30-page patch book for it, so. But yeah, that was a fun one to do.
And the Propagate?
Yeah, Propagate. I missed that one. I'd like to do another gate delay. I think that's kind of like a function that is really useful in modular, and there really aren't that many modules that do that kind of thing. But yeah, with the Propagate, it's just meant to be like kind of like a trigger sequencer, and then it could also go into the audio range. You could kind of like mix the waveforms together and kind of create these like bit crushy kind of sounds, kind of weird noise and stuff. Yeah,
that was like early days of me starting modular. I remember you brought it over one day, and I had no idea what the hell was happening, and I was like, okay, I guess. But all like the logic and gate delay and all that stuff is what I'm getting into in the past year or two.
Yeah.
Because I have a whole album of like generative sequencing stuff coming out that I did with like, Marbles and Nerd Sequencer and whatever else.
Yeah.
And that one is like, that would have been one of those.
Yeah, it's helpful for sure.
Yeah, maybe you should bring it back. What about the ultra random analog? Because I see that in a lot of systems.
Yeah,
and,
that was
amazing.
A really popular module, I'd say. Yeah. What about it?
Just what was the what made you do that one? It's discontinued now. Are you going to revisit random?
Yes, I don't know if it'll be with SSF.
Okay.
So it could be with Sputnik.
Okay. And to bring it to you guys, Andrew also is the designer of the new Sputnik line of modules, like the variable waveform generator, which I got to test today and sounds really cool. There'll be a review of that coming soon as well. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, the VWG?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's not like a Buchla clone or anything like that, but it is it does have a similar discrete triangle core oscillator, and so the idea is that each of the 4 waveforms, basic waveforms that you get out of VCO, have their own like character control on a slider, and in most cases they have more than one mode. So the triangle has the saturation overdrive, and that could be odd or even harmonic type of overdrive. So an odd harmonic would be like saturating symmetrically and accentuates more of the odd harmonics in the sound, and the even it saturates asymmetrically. It's almost like a pulse width modulation, like soft saturating on a triangle, and you hear more even tone when you saturate it. The saw's got a waveform sawtooth animation, and that could either be double saw or triple saw. And the Scion has a wave folder, and that could be a symmetrical wave folding or asymmetrical, and the pulse obviously has two kinds of pulse width modulation. And then you got a 1 or 2 octave down sub. Everything's got CV with attenuators, and it has hard sync, which is not too common in a discrete triangle core. I don't really love soft sync, but hard sync always had a better sound to me, so I wanted to implement that on this. And in my opinion, it actually sounds a little bit better than like a sawtooth core hard sync. It's a little bit less edgy, and it kind of like rips through in a nicer way, in my opinion.
Cool. I definitely like the sounds I was getting out of it today, just with the Karmit modulating it. And yeah, it's really cool. So expect that review sometime soon. You're designing future stuff for Sputnik then too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So there's a new module. I can't really talk about it yet, but we're aiming for this year. It's very similar to other ones you might have seen, whether it be from Sputnik or what Sputnik is inspired by. So,
did you do the multi-band resonator or whatever it is?
The spectral processor, yeah. So that was the first module. We had a design that was from Sputnik, but I had to go in and kind of redesign a few things, and I changed a few things around that I thought sounded better.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a pretty ambitious project. There's a lot of parts on that.
Yeah, I mean, it looks incredible.
Yeah, and I was able to get it on one PCB,
Wow.
which was nice because it's only like standard module depth instead of being on like 5 cards and like 3.5 inches deep kind of thing,
Skiff friendly.
Yeah, skip friendly.
That's cool. So what's next for SSF?
Well, I've been teasing a new module on Instagram. I'm really excited about it. Probably be talking more about it in the future, but I'm looking to put it out maybe in June. Yeah.
I got a sneak peek today, and it made my jaw drop a little bit. So, yeah, it's a cool one. I can't say either though, but it's dope. Do you make music at all these days?
Yeah, for like 5 minutes here and there.
Okay.
I really get into it. When I'm designing stuff and I test it, I put it in the system, and like 15, 20 minutes, and then I wish I recorded it, kind of a thing. And then move on.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, because when you're doing the panel design, like, do you play with it yourself to make sure it feels right?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes I wonder if makers do that,
Yeah, I mean, I've always been really mindful of like, do my fingers fit over this? I don't have the hugest hands in the world. So if my hand can't fit around a knob, or then it's a problem. I mean, I don't understand how people play when the knobs are like so close together. There's really like a limit for me, depending on the knob size, of like where like pots should be spaced. And if that can't be reached, I have to make the panel bigger. So I try to like make the panel as small as possible, while still being able to use a module.
Yeah, I like the way you design your panels. I've never had like awkwardness. Like some older modules I have, I won't say from who, but like the knobs are so close together that you're turning one and you're turning the other at the same time, just from the flatness of your finger.
Like you rub against it by accident and throw it off. Yeah.
Or I've even like pulled off the knob on one module, like turning it and then hitting the other, and it just goes flying.
Yeah.
That's always fun when you're on stage and you're like, fuck, where did it go?
Yeah, it's
Somewhere in the
gone.
darkness. Oh man. So what are you listening to right now these days?
God. So pathetic.
What do you mean?
I just, I'm just like, well, I have somebody who works with me, and, I'm kind enough to let him listen to whatever he wants.
Okay.
So, I get to listen to, like, weird conspiracy theory stuff,
Okay.
that he plays. And it's just like, like, do I want to listen to music? Yeah. And sometimes listening to music is helpful to me, but sometimes I can't even think when there's music playing.
Okay.
Like his stuff, I can just tune out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just sad because I should be listening to more music.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any things you would list as like your favorite record of all time? I'm just trying to paint a picture of this beautiful man in front of me.
I mean, the picture you'd have to paint is that, like, I don't really, while I appreciate so much music, I'm not like a fan.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how other to put it. Like, I'm just kind of like, I like all kinds of music, but there's just it's never been a thing with me where I'm just like this, this is my shit. But I like all kinds of music.
Mm-hmm.
I've just been into music, period. But yeah, I wish I could name drop more to you, but I feel like I'd be discrediting so many others.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Totally. That's fine. That's a valid answer. You ever done any custom work for any artists?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I already know the answers to these guys, but they're for you.
Yeah, I have. It's okay to do that, yeah.
Yeah?
It's not my favorite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I got a couple ideas. But anyway, speaking of collaborations, you did the triptych with Basic and Boys Noise.
Yep.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
It's really their company in the end, right? Putting it out? Or?
Well, yeah, I mean, they have their company, and it's, basically like a collaboration between the two companies, yeah.
Yeah, it's still my favorite one. But, honestly, I also really love the MMF you did with WMD.
Yeah.
That's been in my live rack since I got it back in the day.
That's a good one.
For those, did you design all the circuits and WMD put them out? Or?
Actually, that one, I didn't design the circuit for the MMF.
Okay.
But I don't know, maybe like 80% of the other ones I did. I think I designed the panel for it. So, like WMD came and did a couple of designs, and I did like, I don't know, 7 or 8 designs. And they added some features to some of those designs. Yeah, so it was just kind of like a collaborative effort. And then they were doing the manufacturing on those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought those were really cool. And then like the Spectrum oscillator and the monosynth with the keyboard.
Yeah.
Really well done.
Yeah, I like that too. It wasn't like we didn't sell a whole bunch of those keyboards at all, but I don't know, I feel like people with modular, they're like, oh, keyboard, like what? Like
yeah, totally. But it's cool in the same way because there wasn't a modular keyboard like that before, I don't think.
Yeah, what I liked about it is, it's a keyboard, but like that keyboard had aftertouch, it had velocity, like, they're like, all those keys are buttons. You could do a lot of expressive stuff with it. Just maybe it didn't look like a touch plate or something, but, same idea, basically.
Yeah, maybe the touch plate would have sold more.
If it was a touch plate, it would have killed it.
Have you ever thought to do like a self-contained instrument, speaking of that? Or?
Yeah, I have, yeah. These are ambitious ideas for me. Mm-hmm. Because when it comes down to it, it's really like, module I could do like quickly, I got to pay the bills kind of thing. I always thought in my mind that it would be, any self-contained instrument would be like bits and pieces from the modules that I produced. And I think that would like help cut down like design time and whatnot. And then it would just be like, interface enclosure kind of a thing, which is not something, enclosures aren't something I'm very familiar with. I've just been doing the PCB with panel. So that would just be like another road. But yeah, I mean, I would totally love to do something like that. So one day.
Okay. I'd be curious to see that. How about, how has the chip shortage affected you? We're going to get there.
Yeah. Well, let me put it this way. When I knew that they were going to start to disappear, I bought as much as I could, and that hurt. But I'm thankful that I did. I don't have every component that I'd like to have, but that's kind of driven me like, okay, we'll have to design new stuff now. Because, I mean, they say it's going to be like next winter, stuff comes back, but what do you think is going to happen? Everyone's waiting for it, so they're just all going to be scarce again. So, there's that, and it's affected how I do things. I kind of build things to order right now, and I have like little pieces of paper with how many more of what module I can make, and so I have to choose between that. So the clock's going down, but thankfully I have some designs for this year that I have enough parts for, I have everything for, so I'm going to focus on those.
What's the immediate next thing coming out?
That Instagram module, I think.
Okay.
But the Vortices Hi-Fi is coming out. I mean, that's I already shipped some already. So
Okay, so it'll be out in like a couple weeks.
Yeah. I think stores are already starting pre-orders on those.
Dope.
I didn't make a ton of them, but it is kind of like a limited thing. I mean, like that whole idea to do that came out of the fact that I'm not going to be able to make many more regular Vortices. But I have a lot of stuff, a lot of parts, PCBs and stuff. So I know that there have been people who've expressed to like have that feature set, maybe without the tape saturation and the high-end roll-off. So I thought that was a good idea. I think
it's cool.
Yeah,
It's a good idea too.
Yeah. So that, and then the mystery module that won't be a mystery soon. So
It's going to be really good, guys. That's dope. I think we just about covered every question. My question to you now is there anything you'd like to say or announce or tell to the audience?
Thanks for buying SSF stuff.
Cool, man. Yeah, SSF, Andrew, lovely guy. Thanks everyone for watching.